Good morning, it's Tuesday, June 30th, and we're going to begin with a prompt from the Daily Stoic, which reads, how can I use this obstacle as an opportunity? So it's the last day of June, which means it's the end to our discussion on problem solving. And I guess it's fitting that we then close my favorite subject with a final exploration of another one of my personal 10 Commandments, which also happens to be the title of one of the most impactful books that I've ever read, Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. So to give proper context to the shortened form of the quote that I usually refer to here, here's the original text from Marcus Aurelius' diary. While it's true that someone can impede our actions, they can't impede our intentions and our attitudes, which have the power of being very conditional and adaptable. For the mind adapts and converts any obstacle to its action into a means of achieving it. That which is an impediment to action is turned to advance action. The obstacle on the path becomes the way. So in this sense, when we find ourselves in a challenging situation and are unsure how best to resolve it, this concept reminds us to identify and then use the biggest obstacle in our way as the guiding light along that path forward. To make this idea a bit more practical, I'll share with you some additional insight on the time spent in preparation and then during my recent interviews. When I was extended the invitation to take part in a series of 5 interviews for this role, I was asked to prepare 10 to 15 minutes of content on any topic of my choosing that I would then present during each of my one-on-one interviews the next week. The material was supposed to be robust enough to be used with my discussions for the heads of various different business functions. And when the request was first made to me, I was excited, as the possibilities were endless. I could go in any direction that I wanted. But then, as I began my preparation in Austin and found myself staring blankly at an empty PowerPoint template for far too long, I realized that that same freedom was presenting a huge impediment to action. I was stuck. I knew the importance of that presentation, and I've created hundreds of slide decks over the course of my career, but I couldn't even get started here. Feeling lost and overwhelmed, I remember closing my laptop and heading to the bathroom to brush my teeth, still thinking about how to progress this thing. Then, as I looked into the bathroom mirror, I saw the answer staring me right in the face, both literally and figuratively. It was so obvious, I was almost embarrassed to admit that I hadn't seen it yet. I mean, every morning for the last 6 months, I've practiced writing a critical thinking response to a prompt that I've never seen before. I've developed the habits and skills which help me make progress every time that I feel lost or stuck. Why should I treat this any differently? So I went back to Houston and I swapped my PowerPoint for a pen and a notebook, and I began to write. I wrote for nearly 2 solid days. And when I completed my first draft, I read through it, and it was arguably the best thing that I've ever written. But then I read it aloud, and my heart kind of sank. While it was an impressive piece of literature, there was no way that I could give this thing as a presentation. The tone and the formality were totally off the mark. No one talked like the way that I wrote. So I rewrote it. I rewrote all of it. And this time making an effort to collapse my floral language into tight, concise key messages that I still retained that original intent. And then I designed simple but supportive slides to improve the messaging of my talk. Finally, I practiced a lot, over and over, to where I could have given that talk in my sleep, and I was ready. Eventually, it was time for my interviews, and the Logos decided to throw me a curve. Not a single interviewer requested to see my presentation, not one. Instead, we followed a more natural cadence of conversation and question and answer. But as we talked, I found all of those key points of my writing seamlessly weaving themselves into my verbalizations. My position was so well established and refined that I never found myself at a loss for words. I was articulate. I was on point. So in hindsight, I was right. That presentation that I never did give was the obstacle. I just had to look at it differently and then allow it to carve a path for me. And just as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.